So what we're trying to do is get schooled in some of the basics of something called rhetoric. Here's your fancy word for the day. The term rhetoric has a long history in academics. One of the most famous treatises on rhetoric comes from Aristotle, roughly 300-400 BC, and the book is surprisingly called On Rhetoric. So he talks about communication and how it happens and how people construct messages and how you can understand messages. His book, by the way, is still pretty relevant today, and we will actually read portions of it second semester when we're studying Greek tragedy. There's your definition. Rhetoric is the study of the effective use of language. So even though for our discussion of definitions, I drew your attention to the visual, we will focus on the textual, the verbal. We'll focus on words. We could draw our attention to some of the images within Friday Night Lights because some of the copies of the book do have pictures. However, we won't. That's a really interesting place to go, but we just don't really have the time to do the visual as well as the textual. We have enough work with the textual. So we're going to take a look at the text. So here's some more definitions of concepts. And remember what I'm doing here. I'm giving you an analytical model to use in your writing to help unravel the meaning in this book. The study of rhetoric classically focuses on three claims, three different meanings that might be presented to an audience. When I say claims, I'm talking about a sort of way that the sender wants to communicate with you. What type of information does the sender want to communicate? The first one is called logos. These are some ancient Greek terms. The word logos. Yes, I know it looks like the word logo. It's not logo. It's not logos. It's logos with a different sound on the S because it's the it's not just the plural of logo. What does it look like to you? I'm sorry? What words does it make you think of? When I say what does it look like for you, realize that a lot of our language owes its inheritance to Greek and Latin, and you know that from your vocab study last year. So what does this look like, Chris? It does look like logic. Excellent. Looks like logic, looks like logical. We also have ethos. Ryan. Ethical. Excellent. Chris and Ryan so far are correct that our words ethical and our words logic derive from these ancient Greek terms. And pathos. Yeah. Very good. Sympathetic, empathetic, antipathetic. These words follow from the same root. Just the word pathetic itself follows from this ancient Greek. These are your three basic claims. The first one's pretty obvious. This is where you're using your rational brain. The author is trying to convince you of something using just logic, reason, science, brute numbers. Trying to convince you by using conscious reflection. So this is where your conscious mind is turned on. This is where your direct reflection is turned on. They're making an argument. Let's turn to Friday Night Lights for a moment. Can anybody tell me a place where they think that Bissinger in Friday Night Lights is definitely using logical reasoning to try to appeal to you? Where there seems to be some amount of detail of statistics to prove some sort of point. Yes? Okay, excellent. Mitchell, you're talking about the boom-bust cycle, and you're talking about some of the statistics that go into that. So really, what is Bissinger trying to communicate to you about Odessa or any of his subjects? Excellent. He's trying to depict the economic fortunes of that particular culture and showing you that it is the way it is because of the economic fortunes of the United States, stretching through the 20th century connected to energy production. Good. And he uses numbers, and he uses data from history. And that's him just appealing to you logically. You're thinking about it reflectively. You're understanding the situation using your logical faculties. Layer number one, easiest one. This one is probably the least apparent, the one that it'll take you a little bit of time to understand. Authors develop a personal identity, and this is very implicit. Authors rarely come out in their works and say, I am author X, and this is my background, and this is why you should believe me. They don't say that explicitly. They say that implicitly. And there are a number of ways that they say that implicitly. Once again, let's turn to Friday Night Lights. If ethos is the building of an identity on the author that helps you trust them or believe them, what does Bissinger do in Friday Night Lights that lends credibility to what he's discussing? Why do you believe that Bissinger knows what he's talking about? Ryan? Now let's say for a moment, Ryan, you're absolutely correct, but let's say for a moment that you did not know that he actually went there, right? What about his writing and his reporting on this tells you that he's been there and thus lends the credibility? And the direct quotations. The description and the quotations are most evident. So if he has first person, or I'm sorry, primary source quotations from a subject in a locker room that people don't have access to, suddenly his personal identity and his credibility rises in your mind, and you think, I should listen to this guy, he knows what he's talking about. The quality of information that he presents, the way that he presents it, and if he presents it in a fairly objective fashion, where he balances things and he doesn't seem to be judging it, he seems fair and objective, and you, therefore, trust him more. So there are a number of ways that Bissinger communicates this level of trust implicitly. Thank you, Ryan. Good. Last one, pathos. That's emotion. We're appealing to emotion. We don't want to make you think about something. We want to make you feel something. This is sort of a mid-level between the two. Ethos is most subtle, or can be most subtle. Logos is most obvious. Pathos, somewhere between the two. And therefore, it's a good intro point, because you want to analyze something that's not totally obvious, like logos, but it might be a little bit difficult at first to jump right into ethos. So often, we look at the way that an author develops emotion, the way that an author plays with your non-rational sentiments to begin to understand this sort of rhetorical analysis.